Hi there, Claire Downham here, transformational coach with a step from stress to inner peace. And my inner peace has been slightly gone awry this morning because I did just try to go live and I got a big red message saying you can't go live on LinkedIn. But I know I can because I've done it all week. Anyway, it all appears to be fine this time. So apologies if you started watching and then I suddenly disappeared. It's because I got this puzzling message at the side of the screen that was telling me I shouldn't be here. Anyway, so it's a really great thing in a way that happened, because at the point at which that happened, and I haven't got my glasses on, so I could see there was a red box, I could see the words LinkedIn, and I couldn't really read it properly. At that point, when I saw that message saying that there was something wrong with my streaming, I could initially feel, I can feel it still a little bit now, kind of a feeling right down the middle of my body. It's mainly focused around my stomach, it's a little bit in my chest, and it's a kind of tightness, it's an unpleasant feeling. But you know what? That's okay, because at that moment when it looked like my live stream was not working properly, it was okay for me to feel a little bit uneasy. Like I had some thinking about, oh, have LinkedIn decided they don't want me to go live anymore? Is something going wrong? Is there a conflict between the different streams, or whatever it was, that something had gone wrong? And then some thoughts around, oh, have I done something wrong? Have I been a naughty girl in some way? Anybody else ever had that feeling that it's because you've done something wrong, the reason why something has failed, particularly with technology? So I just think that's a really great place to start in a way. Isn't it funny how the universe sends us these little lessons? Because it was my thinking in that moment that took me off that nice, peaceful thing. It took me into a more stressful state. There was definitely a bit of adrenaline pumping through my body because I could feel it physically. But in the past, I would have looked at the thing that was going wrong and I would have said, oh, it's that thing that's going wrong, so I'll need to make sure that never happens again, and I'll have to be over vigilant and a bit paranoid, whereas I have just literally rebooted the system and come back on again and cracked on with it, because it's okay. It's absolutely okay to have an unpleasant feeling. It's fine. It doesn't matter. It's not hurting me because it's coming from up here. So it's just something happening inside my body. There are some thoughts around the failing of my stream. There are some feelings deep within me. And that's all that is. It's no more complicated than that. I don't have to go into my past and try and work out where that feeling came from. It's coming from thought in the moment. My experience is coming from thought in the moment. And I don't have to do anything. I don't need to go sit in a chair and meditate now. I don't need to do any tapping. I don't need to do any deep breathing, because now my thinking has gone on to chatting to you, seeing how many people are watching, seeing that I've got a lady called Claire. So good morning, Claire. Oh, a Claire saying good morning to a Claire, how wonderful. And I've got B saying good morning. So it's, it's all okay. It's all okay, because my thinking has moved on, and now I can feel that push of adrenaline has just moved on, and it's just starting to dissipate all by itself. And I haven't had to do anything. I haven't had to poke myself or prod myself or go for therapy, because it's just gone. And one of the reasons why it has gone so quickly is that I haven't, apart from talking to you about it, I haven't spent a long time analysing it and poking it and prodding it. So this is the opposite, really, of what happens when we have an unpleasant feeling or an unpleasant thought. We think we've got to do something about it. We think we've got to be monitoring and checking in and making sure we're okay all the time. And what happens then is that, for example, if you already see yourself as somebody having a diagnosis of something like anxiety, then the minute you feel a feeling like that, you will assume there is something wrong. There is something wrong. There's something going wrong in the world. And you may well either try to change something in your environment. So you may move yourself away from something you think is creating that feeling. You may try and change something. You may, you may need to go and deal with something in the outside environment to make that go away. Or you may think you've got to do something to you to make it go away. That you've got to do something to yourself. You've got to use one of those tools or strategies that a therapist has given you. But in actual fact, you don't have to do anything at all. You don't have to do anything at all, because as your thinking changes, as you move on to something else, this unpleasant feeling inside will just dissipate all on its own. It'll just melt away. That's what will happen without you needing to do anything at all. And I think what happens once you've experienced some kind of stressful or anxious feeling and you've got that kind of label, you kind of can end up becoming a little bit hypervigilant in that any little feeling that you feel inside your body, or any thought that you feel taking you away from peace, you'll feel the need perhaps to do something about that. And that ends up being things we do in the moment, but also seeking all the time to look for solutions outside of us in terms of therapy and counselling or whatever else you might try. But what if it didn't matter? My absolute most favourite quote from the guy who came up with the understanding that I speak to you about, Sydney Banks. He said I'm probably going to get the words muddled, but that's fine. Generally what he said was, if people could learn not to be afraid of their experience, that alone would change the world. And that doesn't mean not to be afraid if you're actually being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, or if you're actually about to step out in front of a vehicle, or you're trying to stop your child doing that or something like that. But the fear of our experience comes when we exist in the misunderstanding that that's being created outside of us. If you kind of know, I feel a bit, oh, well, I know I've got some thoughts that are a bit, then, and you know there's that correlation between the two, there's nothing to do but just wait for your thinking to change. And almost by magic, it generally does do that. It just does it all by itself. We have this self-writing mechanism within us. We have this kind of deep innate well-being and this innate resilience. We have this ability to bounce back when we let ourselves. Whereas if the minute you experience one of those feelings and you start to focus in on it, it will not get better. It will get stronger before it gets better. Even if you're using some tool or technique, you're focusing on that feeling and focusing on that feeling and looking at that feeling and over-analysing what's going on around you and trying to push and shove and change things. Then that feeling just gets bigger. It does not cause it to shrink. Because when we look at something over and over again in lots of different ways, that thing just becomes more. It's a bit like when you've got a scab. So, we don't have many scabs as adults, do we? Because we don't fall over and bump our knees quite so much. But we do. I had an incident with some custard the other day where I ended up with, I don't think you still see it, but I ended up with still got a little bit of a scar there. I walked past a pan of custard and it splashed up and burnt my arm. And it's healed all by itself. Aren't we magical? Clever things, humans, that we can just heal all by ourselves. However, if I had picked that thing on my arm and picked it and picked it and picked it, it probably still would be a horrible scab now. I mean, I can be a bit of a scab picker. Sorry for oversharing, but I can. But that scab is a little bit like, it's not in an annoying place. Like if it was on my finger or my hand, I probably would have been more like to pick it. But I left it alone and it healed all by itself. But I've seen, you know, I've got children and I've seen them pick their scabs as kids, and they just take ages and ages to heal. And it's a bit like that if you are poking and prodding something that actually, trust me, has an innate ability to heal. You don't need to do anything to heal. It will happen all by itself if you let it. What we end up with, if we allow, is a flow through of thoughts. So our mind, our headspace, who we really are, is more like the blue sky, with just these little fluffy clouds floating past. However, if we get hold of one of those clouds and we go, this is not an okay cloud, I don't like this cloud, I want to get rid of it, the cloud gets bigger and bigger and bigger and becomes a storm. And then we get even more hidden. You know, the us that is the sunlight and the blue sky gets really well hidden. And it takes more time for that to dissolve away and for us to return back to that peaceful place where we're meant to be. So you have my permission for a weekend off. I'm sorry, if you work, I can't actually give you the weekend off because that's not my job. However, I would like to invite you to just have a weekend off from needing to do anything about your thoughts and feelings, to just let them go. Just let them go. You don't have to stay on a horrible thought if it's a horrible thought, but it will go. Just let it. Don't do anything about it. Just let it go. So if you just have a weekend off from being hyper vigilant and thinking you've got to monitor and thinking you've got to try and force change in your emotions and your thinking, just try it for a weekend. Have the weekend off. Chill out and see what happens. I'd love to hear from some people. Just message me if you found that helpful. And if over the weekend you just manage to just go, do you know what? Whatever turns up, and I'm going to be okay. Then do let me know, because I'd love to hear from you. So I can't believe it's Friday again already. I don't know about you, it goes faster and faster every week. Absolute joy as always to speak to anyone out there who's watching, and hopefully anybody who watches later. I always say at the end of this, I hope that's taken you on a step closer from a journey from stress to inner peace. Take care and have a lovely weekend, and I will definitely talk to you again soon.